out of the center of my forehead shot out this giant golden eye. It was huge. And this golden eye, so it's coming out of my forehead and now it's looking back at me. I was confused. I thought, is that my eye looking back at me? Or is that God's eye looking back at me? I couldn't get it. And then God just said, I am viewing your life through you as you. You and I are one. And then he sent me back.
Welcome to the Spirit Sisters podcast. My name is Karina Machado, and I'm the author of Spirit Sisters, Women's True Stories of the Paranormal. In this podcast, I'll revisit the women behind my most unforgettable stories and unearth new tales to chill, intrigue, astound, and offer hope. You'll hear first-hand accounts of sacred journeys, spirit encounters, near-death experiences, angels, mysteries, marvels, and love more powerful than death. Whatever you believe about the afterlife, I invite you to open your minds and hearts as ordinary people reveal their extraordinary encounters. I acknowledge the Darawal people, who are the traditional custodians of the land of Sutherland Shire in Australia, where I live and record Spirit Sisters, and I recognise their continuing connection to lands, waters and community. I pay respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and to elders past, present and emerging. You're listening to Spirit Sisters. I'm your host, Karina Machado. I'm really excited to share today's conversation with you. I have an interview with Jacob King. Jacob is a young Australian man in his early 30s. He lives in Melbourne. He had a profoundly transformative near-death experience within the last couple of years. So he's still processing it. It's very recent. He's only recently begun to talk about it. So I'm really honoured to be able to have had a conversation with him in these very early stages of his integration of his near-death experience. As you're about to hear, he's an incredibly wise young man. He's got a real depth of experience and expression, and I really appreciated his candour. He's incredibly honest about the traumatic experiences that he's had. On that note, there's a trigger warning here. Please note that Jacob does refer to suicide in his conversation, so please get in touch with Lifeline if that brings up issues for you. I'm going to keep this introduction short because I really just want to jump into this conversation and share it with you. So please enjoy and please let me know. I'd be very keen to hear your thoughts on it. And there is the option of getting Jacob back on the show. So if you have follow-up questions, please let me know. In the meantime, enjoy my conversation with Jacob King. Welcome to the Spirit Sisters podcast, Jacob.
Thanks, Karina.
It's really lovely to have you on. I'm excited to welcome a fresh Australian voice onto the show. And when I heard your NDE, I thought how wonderful that we've got a young Australian guy sharing and just broadening this space. So very, very happy to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
All right. So you had an NDE in October 2021 that completely transformed your life. Now, I'm wondering, Jacob, if we could please begin by you painting a picture for us of what life was like in the lead up to the NDE and then taking us through it, the experience itself, in as much detail as you can.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in a very traumatic household, basically. My father was extremely violent and my mother was very, very unstable. And, I had some siblings as well, and, we didn't get along. So things were pretty awful, to say the least. Almost every week we either had police or ambulance or social workers at our house. And, you can imagine growing up in a place like that, in an environment like that, as you get older, it can really mess you up. And my outlet for getting away from all that is I used to always play sports. I was really into soccer in primary school, basketball in high school, and I used to love to get into the flow state when I was playing sports, and that was my getaway. And I used to think when I was growing up, I want to go to the NBA. When I get older, I'm going to get into the NBA and I'm going to get away from all this mess. And that wasn't going to happen. I wasn't good enough. So by the time I became an adult and I realized, oh man, I spent all my life basically trying to become a professional athlete and it's not going to happen. And then the reality started to set in like, hey, I'm a pretty messed up dude. Like I'm traumatized. I'm starting to become an addict. Every time I have alcohol, I drink too much. Every time somebody offers me something to take, I'll take it so it can numb the pain. I'm dysfunctional. And I went on to the healing journey, and I did try to heal, but it was difficult. I'll be honest. I was struggling to heal from all the damage that I experienced, and I had some success here and there, but I had too many addictions that were in the way of my healing. I Things got really bad during the lockdowns. 2020 hit, and I no longer had a physical outlet. I used to be a really keen martial artist. I was at home, I was a drug addict, but when I was out of the house, I was going to martial arts gym and I was training hard, and that was my therapy. And then I lost that during the lockdowns, and it really messed me up. I was one of those people who, I struggled. I didn't want the lockdowns because it took away my therapy, and I started to use more and more drugs and alcohol, and it was getting pretty bad. And I started getting really suicidal. I've been suicidal before. It was a bit different this time because now I'd really started to give up on ever getting better. In the past, I always had some hope that, oh, one day I will change, one day I will heal, one day I'll get better. Um, and I started to lose hope. I started to think, no, it's not going to happen. I think I'm just going to be a drug addict and homeless and all that. Like that's this type of story. I'm living a sad story. My life is a sad story. I'm a victim of my circumstances. And I truly believed that at one point, gave up. Yeah, so I gave up on getting better, and I thought the highlight of my life was going to be every time I could afford to take drugs. And one day I went out and bought my drugs, and I went home and I just locked myself in the room, and I started taking the drugs, a few different drugs at the same time. And I knew what the effects were, and, sort of pass out and whatever, and it was all good. But this time, when I passed out, uh, I was very conscious in a way that I usually wouldn't be. I was all of a sudden I'm in some dark space and I'm looking around and there's nothing there except me. I'm there by myself, and I'm going, all right, what's going on here? And I start feeling this energy coming into this environment. I call this place the void because it's void of everything except yourself. And in this void, this energy started to come within. And I was like, oh, this energy is nice. Like it's very warm, it's very loving, it's very powerful. And this energy started to surround me. And it was like my entire body was being embraced by this energy. So I still felt like I was in a human body in this place. And I was just enjoying this energy, and it just felt really nice. And then I was like, wow, like this energy is so perfect. It's like it's like the key in the lock that I was looking for. I was like, oh, everything I was chasing on earth, like every time I wanted to, sleep with a woman or take a drug or get some money or buy a car, or like all those things that I was chasing, I was looking to scratch some inner itch, and none of it really worked. But now this does. And like if I can just spend time with this energy, I don't need anything else. And I was happy there. And I started to realize that this energy was very familiar. I was like, I've been around this energy before. And then I was like trying to scan throughout my life, like where have I found this? Where have I spent time with this energy? And I scanned through my whole life in about 1 second, and I couldn't find it. And I kept scanning, and then I was able to scan before I was born. And I realized, oh, I spent time with this energy before I was born. And then I realized, oh, wait a minute, this is God. This is God's energy. Oh, and I was just amazed. I was like, wow, God is hugging me right now. And I remember there was a moment there where, I realized this was God, and I could feel the sheer magnitude of the power of this energy was unlike anything you could possibly experience on earth, because it was like, I remember feeling like this is the energy that gives life to all of the universes. All the universes have this energy running through them. And this energy is love. But it's such a strong love that it's intimidating. I was genuinely intimidated, but it was also love at the same time. It was kind of, so I felt like, okay, I can either choose to be scared of this power, or I could either fall into its love. And I had the choice to make. It was 50-50, fear or love. And I chose the love, but not by much. Honestly, it was 50-50. It was genuinely very, very intimidating how strong this love was. And as I fell into this love, there was still a little bit of a slight amount of fear, because you felt like you could dissolve. If you think about when you hug somebody that you love very deeply, and you hug them tight, and you almost feel like you can melt into their arms. Imagine that, but multiply that feeling over and over again. Like, there's a point where you feel like you can pass out from how relaxing, and you really feel like melting. Like, yeah, you're going to dissolve in their arms. And this is how I felt. I genuinely felt like I could disintegrate in this love. But I had to trust it, because the other option was to be scared. And if I chose to be scared, I think things would have gotten really, really bad. So I just chose to trust it and just to love, to be in this love. And when I took that decision, when I chose that one, God took me out of this void, and I was somewhere else. And this other place that I was taken to was something that looked like space, very, very similar to space as we see it, with all the nebulas and the beautiful colors and all of that. But it was filled with like millions and billions of lights, these little lights that had all these colors emanating from them. And these colors were unlike any colors you could see on Earth. They were so beautiful that it was almost hard to look at because of how beautiful it was. If you've ever looked at a piece of art before and you're really amazed, you're looking at that art, okay, let's say you're feeling a little bit of awe, a little bit of astonishment. You start multiplying that astonishment over and over and over again. There's a point in time where you are so astonished, you're going to have a heart attack. That's how I felt looking at this art. It was too much. I felt like I was going to die from what I was looking at. It was that beautiful. And God started to, he was gathering all these lights together, and he was literally putting on an art show for me. And the art was so beautiful, and it was just constantly evolving and revolving and changing, and the colors were changing, and it was all very dynamic. And I was getting a bit like, I was so taken aback. I was like, hey, God, this is a bit much. Like, I don't know if I can handle this. This is getting dangerous. And God had a sense of humor, and he said, hey, it's all good. Like, relax. I'm putting on a show for you. You just enjoy it. And I was like, all right, I'll try. It wasn't easy. And yeah, as I'm just watching this, and then eventually he took me and we started flying through heaven together. And as we were flying through, I'm absorbing all the art, the beauty of what I'm seeing. But it kind of, as I'm flying, it also kind of felt like I was swimming underwater. But the reason I say it also felt like swimming underwater is because there was a feeling there of flying through something. The substance that I was flying through was love. There was a physical, tangible aspect to the love. Like, it was almost like a material. that you could fly through. The faster we were flying, the more of this love I was absorbing, and the art, the visual aspect to everything I was also absorbing. And so as I'm absorbing all this, it's getting too much. It's genuinely, I feel like I'm going to burst from how much of this love and beauty I'm absorbing. I'm starting to get to the point where I'm feeling like, all right, it's too much, it's too much, it's too much. And then God's stopped me somewhere. And we stopped at this place that looked like a skyscraper, like a giant tower. But this giant tower was made of the same kind of lights as all the stars. And these stars were very obviously conscious to me. They were souls. And this giant skyscraper tower thing was made of the same kind of light as these souls were. And I looked to the top of it, and I couldn't see the top of it because of how high it was. And God is next to me, and God is just an invisible ball of energy. I can feel God, but there's no seeing God. You just feel the energy. And God says, all right, we're going to the top of this. I said, all right. And we start flying up the side of this tower, going towards the top of it. And as I'm getting towards the top, you know, the speed is increasing and increasing, and I'm feeling like, oh, it's getting dangerous. It's getting dangerous. I'm about to burst. Too much, overload, overload. And it's getting kind of scary. Like I'm about to die. I'm about to die from how much of this I'm absorbing. And just as I feel like I'm about to die, we get to the top. And I was like, whew, thank God that was close. Nearly died there. All right, I'm glad I'm still here. And I'm at the top of this tower, and I'm just like, all right, cool. Thankful to still be in one piece. And I walk to the edge of the tower, and I look out. And as I look out, I'm just seeing billions and trillions of these souls, these stars, these lights. They're just everywhere, and they're all conscious, and it was beautiful to look at and breathtaking, a really breathtaking view. As I'm just there and I'm sort of, catching my breath, and then God speaks to me vibrationally and telepathically, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute, all right, wait a minute. I nearly died coming up this tower, and there's a lot more, but like if I go through that, if I fly through what you want me to fly through next, I'm gonna die for sure. For sure, I'm gonna die. And he just said, yes. And I'm like, what? What do you mean, yes? Like, I wasn't expecting that answer, and I had to think about it for a moment. And I was like, okay, God is very, very, very wise, very, very loving, very, very powerful, and so calm. And just very matter of fact about it. And I can tell, I can feel like he knows it'll be a good thing for me to go through that. But I have a fear of death now. Like, well, I'm going to die. But he wants me to die. Okay. All right. Well, why not? It's just like, who am I to argue with a being this great? If I'll just take his advice and I'll fly through it. Like, let's do it. I trust you, God. And then God, like, he just picked me up, like, as if he picked up a paper airplane. And he just threw me, and I started to glide. And first it was easy, and I was like, oh, this is not so bad. And as I'm going through, and the speed starts increasing and increasing, and I'm going faster and faster, and the love and the light, and oh, I'm getting to my breaking point again. It's getting too much, too fast, too much. And I was getting to that breaking point, and I remembered that, okay, obviously God wants me to get past this breaking point, so let's just see what happens. And I got past that breaking point, and what happened was, as I was getting past that point, I felt like the skin on my face started to peel off, and the bones underneath it, and the muscles, and all these layers of human identification that had remained with me in this place all started to dissolve. And it felt fantastic. It felt amazing. It felt like taking off a very tight shoe, and you can relax. And I realized that all this trauma that I had been carrying within me all my life were contained within these layers. And as the layers were coming off, I started to feel healed. So one layer after another is coming off as I'm flying through all these stars and flying through all the love, and then I start getting down to the final layer. And I knew there was only one layer left. And that's when I wondered. I thought, I wonder what happens now. Like when I lose this final layer, well, there's nothing left after that. Then I'm really dead. And I kept flying and flying, and I kept waiting for this layer to dissolve. And it wouldn't dissolve. It just it just was completely unaffected by what I was experiencing. I was so confused. What is this layer within me that won't dissolve, that just stays completely unaffected by what I'm experiencing? What is this layer? And then it's like God just stopped me from flying. I was just instantly stopped, and He picked me up. And I was like a little grain of sand in His hand. And He showed me what He was looking at from His point of view. And now I refer to God as a he, but God transcends gender. I could just as easily say she, but it's just easier for me to say he. So keep that in mind. So God is looking at me, and I'm seeing through His eyes. I'm seeing light, a white light, and this is the light. This was the final layer within me that would not dissolve and was completely unaffected by being in this place. And He said, no matter what you've gone through and what you will go through, everything you experience will fade away. This light within you, this is eternal. This will never change. Remember this. Remember who you are. And then He rolled me out of His hand, just like rolling a little marble, like a little tiny ball that He just rolled out of His hand. And as He rolled me out of His hand, I joined with the rest of the lights. And all these lights, as I joined with them, we became like one unified being. It was like taking a drop of water and putting it in the ocean, and then it became one with the ocean. And there was no ego, there was no sense of me being a human, me being a male, me being any of that. I completely forgot about all that. I became one with this ocean. We were one. As I became one with this ocean of lights, I felt like I was one with God. There were no boundaries anymore. We were all one. And it was so beautiful. I felt like this is home. This is where I came from. This is who I am. And I was complete here. There was nothing else I ever needed ever again. This is it. What else do I need after this? And there was no more time. I was there for, I don't know, it's just time ceased to exist. And eventually God, He took me out of there, and He separated me from the ocean again. And next to me appeared an image of this human body that I'm in right now. And that human body was passed out on earth. I could see it, and I remembered, oh, that's the guy I used to be. I used to think I was that guy. And then I knew, oh, you're showing me this because you're going to send me back to that now, aren't you? And he said, yes. And I said, oh. And I knew what was coming. I thought, wait, I got to ask you some questions first. And he said, okay. And I said, how am I supposed to go from that like, and going back to Earth and being that guy again. That guy is depressed, he's suicidal, he's a drug addict, and now I'm going to go back to being him? How? It's too much of a contrast. And he just said, it's okay. And when he said it's okay, embedded within the vibration of that, saying, I don't judge you. I don't judge you for what you've turned into, the mistakes you've made, who you've become. No, I accept you exactly as you are. I don't judge you. I accept you. And that was very healing for me because I used to judge myself all the time. And this religious version of God that I was taught about growing up would have sent me straight to hell. But no, when I encountered God directly, He's not like that. God understands why we become what we become, all the things we struggle with, all of that. He gets it. He gets it, you know? And I said, okay, but like when I go back to that, I'm gonna need to tell everyone about this. Because how can this place exist and I didn't know about it? I mean, yeah, I'd heard about heaven and that, but it's very different when you experience it directly. Like, I'm not going to be able to keep this to myself, but no one down there is going to believe me. And I thought about people that were closest to me. I thought about my cousins and my best friends and stuff. And I thought, can you show them this love that I'm experiencing right now, this energy? Can you share it with them? And then he said, well, that's what you're there for. I was like, what? Me? How am I supposed to give them all this love? And he said, you can ask me for help. You can ask to help become an outlet for this love. I was like, oh, become an outlet. It's very different to how I was doing things, you know. I was on Earth, I was trying to do things with my ego and produce goodness myself and doing all that and trying to repair my ego. And like, I like that. That's a good, be an outlet for the love. So just let the love flow through me. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can do that. And I thought, but God, like when I get back there and I have a feeling I'm just gonna go back to my old ways again. Like I'm gonna go back and be a human and think I'm a human and start taking drugs again. And like, I don't want to go through all that. Like, I don't want to lose touch with you again. And then God said, but I am you. I said, what? What? How can you say you are me? You are so powerful and so amazing. And there's no way that you are me. How? And it was like time stood still. And out of the center of my forehead shot out this giant golden eye. It was huge. And this golden eye, so it's coming out of my forehead and now it's looking back at me. And I was confused. I thought, is that my eye looking back at me? Or is that God's eye looking back at me? Like, I couldn't get it. And then God just said, I am viewing your life through you as you. You and I are one. And then he sent me back.
Oh my goodness, Jacob, what an extraordinary account. And you have such a beautiful way of sharing it, of rendering it. I love the imagery you use. I love the idea that God picked you up like a paper aeroplane or rolled you out of his palm like a marble. It's very beautiful. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to share it with us today. It's divine, literally. I have a few questions just from, I've been taking some notes as you've been sharing. And one of the things I'd love to ask you about is you scanned your life in a second, you said. Is this the life review that we often hear about in NDEs, or was it something different?
No, I don't think it was a life review because I was doing something very specific myself. The life review that I hear from other NDEs is something that is shown to them. It's not something that they're doing themselves.
Okay.
And I didn't experience things from, I know in the life review, people experience the effects of their actions through the point of view of somebody else.
Mm.
I didn't experience that. So, yeah, my NDE is a little different in that I didn't have a life review.
Mm.
That is,
Yeah.
I'm not the only person like that. There are a few others, but it's
Yes.
pretty rare.
Okay. And I was
Yeah.
also interested in what you said about scanning your life before birth. What did you experience there? Were you referencing past lives and or simultaneous lives? What was going on there?
It was literally like that. I was in some kind of heavenly realm, and yeah, it's like a life between lives, I
Okay.
guess you can say. I remember when I was young that I did remember parts of my previous life. In my previous life, I could remember being an African American guy and stuff. And yeah, so I'm not saying not saying anything about reincarnation now. I'm just saying that what I remembered was the life in between lives. And yeah, I was just I don't know, we're just all there basking in God's energy, and it's beautiful, it's really amazing and so very different to what the religious people will teach you about, hellfire and brimstone and all that. No, it was nothing like that. This was, yeah, like I said, like the key to the lock. Like this is all we're really after at the end of the day. And I got to experience that, and it would change my life.
And you talked about knowing that the ultimate choice is between fear or love. And it struck me that well, first of all, I read a spiritual text called A Course in Miracles, and you can essentially sum up the whole thing like that life is a choice between fear or love, that those are basically the only two emotions that we have, or the two states of consciousness, and we have to choose. And so it was really profound to hear that you experienced that in your NDE. But do you feel like outside of life, outside of the NDE, when we're in our human, flesh suit, that it's also a never-ending choice between fear and love?
Yeah, it is, but it's so subtle because I don't know about you, but to me, when I hear the word fear, it's like, oh, somebody holds a knife to your neck, that like that kind of fear. And obviously, we're not experiencing that all the time, but it's like maybe that's just because I'm a dude and we're not as emotionally intelligent as most women are, I think. But to me, it's like fear is where you go to hide. Is the thing that makes you go to hide. Sorry, and we are hiding in our egos. And when we hide in our ego, we create separation. You're Karina and I'm Jacob, and we're different. That's the ego. But after my NDE, like I come back and it's kind of like, Karina, there's a vibration and an energy flowing within you that keeps you alive. And that exact same energy and vibration is flowing within me and keeps me alive. And so we are being powered by the same energy. In essence, you are me and I am you, and we are one, just in different bodies. You could think of it almost like, you know, water from the stream in two different bottles. Well, we are the same. And when we are identified with our egos, we are identified with the bottle that the water is in, rather than the water itself, which is all that really matters. That's where the fear is. And don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. Like I still get into that sometimes where, you know, have a sense of separation and distance. And I'm still trying to work it all out, but there really is no difference. Like on an energetic level, there is no difference. And when you choose to be loving about it, and there is no separation, things start to change. So yeah, long story short, yeah,
That's
there is a fear and love, yeah.
I love that analogy of the bottles of water. I've never thought of it that way, and that really makes it quite clear, doesn't it?
Mm.
The other aspect of your experience that I so appreciated and just think is so beautiful is that the idea of creativity. So you described God painting an art show with all of the beautiful lights and just the galaxies and everything that you experienced, which the beauty made you feel like you were going to dissolve. And it just made me think about creativity because I've been pondering that lately. and how fulfilled I feel when I am creating, and how important it is to create as a connector, I guess, to the holy, to the divine, in the sense that I feel that creativity is holy. And your experience seems to speak to that.
Mm. Yeah, I I was really just, it's I struggle to put it into words just how much God enjoyed creating. Creativity is divine. And he even enjoyed my reaction. He just like the poor guy could barely keep himself together. It's all good. I'll put on an art show. You enjoy it. Like he had such a good sense of humor, and he was just creating just freely, and he wasn't attached to one piece. He would create the art and then he'd wipe it out, and then he'd create another thing and he'd just wipe it out, and he just kept creating and creating and wiping it out. A lot like what I think the Buddhists do it. What is it called? The mandalas, I think they call it.
Yes.
Is it? Exact same thing. Create something beautiful, wipe it out, create again. And because he's living in the present moment all the time, and I think the greatest artists are entering into an altered state of consciousness while they're creating. And they're no longer living in the past and future, they're living in the present moment. And the creativity is flowing through them. It's not necessarily that something that they're doing. I think it's something that's being done through them. And that's why sometimes, I don't know what you create, but I'm sure sometimes you create something and you're surprised. Yeah?
Yeah, well, I've often reflected that my first book, Spirit Sisters, was the way it flowed out of me so very easily. It was that, in a sense, I was in tune with something, a sense of, we hear the word channeling, and I guess to some extent, we are always channeling something, each of us.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
exactly what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
yeah.
Something is being channeled through you. This is why, whether you're dancing or making art or writing something or whatever it is, getting your ego to the side and letting something else flow through you feels so healing and so cathartic and therapeutic for other people.
Yes, exactly. I love that. And so, do you feel that the little vessels that we are, the little bottles, that they are an expression of God's creativity, or are they part of our ego protection and projection, something that we've created, a part of the illusion that enhances our belief, our mistaken belief that we're separate from one another?
I think it's an essential part of what we're doing. Just because we shouldn't identify with the vessel does not mean we shouldn't take care of the vessel and respect the vessel. Like I eat very healthy and I like to go to the gym, and I'm trying to keep this vessel in tip-top shape, right? But you can go too far where it's all you care about. If you're starting to go through all this, fake fake ways of being obsessed with the body. Maybe with guys you're taking steroids, or with girls they're going to plastic surgeon every month or two. Like that type of thing is where it's getting too much. It's conquering your consciousness, you could say. The vessel should be there to assist the consciousness, not the other way around, not to capture the consciousness. Most people are in a state where their vessel has captured the consciousness, even if it's something like just, I don't know, the body has its own uh, desires, right? So addictions, like what I had, my body started to have a chemical addiction for certain things, and whenever it asked for it, I would just follow. I would let the body say, "Hey, go get that drug. Go spend the rest of your money on that drug." And I used to go and do it. For it's food, or it's sex, or it's whatever. But the thing is, when you are in that state, the body is never satisfied. The body never says, "Oh, like thanks, I've had enough. I'm good now." Like if you get to that place, like you'll be there for a few minutes or a few hours, and then you're right back on the donkey again. Like it never works. But you get to a place where you're tuned in with the consciousness, the inner essence, the divine essence within us all, and then you let that be the captain of the ship. And that's when you have the transformation, and you're no longer like a dog chasing its tail. You start to have wisdom and clarity, and you start to see things as they really are with the consciousness. But with the body, with and the ego's identification with the body. It's a mess, and it's a recipe for disaster. And that's a disaster that the majority of humanity is experiencing right now.
Yes, so that over-identification with the body and the ego, and the further we identify with that, the less we identify with that spark of eternal light, which God
Mm.
showed you in your experience, that last layer.
Yes,
That
exactly.
yeah, which was it's so very beautiful how you express that, Jacob. And actually, I've just realised here in my notes, you said I used to think I was that guy. So we think
Mm.
we're that. We actually believe it, and we forget the truth.
Yeah, and it's it's interesting being back in the body with those memories. And hey, like on some level, yeah, I do think I am this guy, but it's sort of like I share that identification with something deeper. I'm not all the way there yet. I'm still integrating my experience. It still happened very recently,
Yeah.
and maybe that's why I still sometimes come to tears when I speak about the experience. You know, because it's still very raw to me. But there is something that is deeper within us that we've lost touch with. And I think children are in touch with it. And I think animals are in touch with it, which is why we go crazy for little kids and little animals and stuff. And we, you know, you go through your Facebook feed and those videos that have got millions of views, you know, the baby playing with the dog and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Why? They're just in tune with something deeper, and you don't have to be intellectually aware of it. Actually, it's better if you're not. Better if you're just feeling it. It's something within the nervous system that's natural, you know? You could say something like a primordial identification with something deeper, because I could lose my mind one day. I could lose my memory. I could completely forget what my name is. I could, you know, all that can be wiped away. But there's something deeper that's still running and operating the body. And even when the body dies, that thing leaves the body and it's still running. So that thing that leaves the body is within the body, whether you want to call it the soul or whatever, the essence, the word doesn't matter. It's there and you can feel it. Feel it sometimes when you're creating, or sometimes you feel it when you're having in a spiritual state of mind or you're meditating, whatever it is. But the more you can tune into that, the better off you'll be.
Absolutely agree. And I've been on this quest my entire life. From when I was 7 years old, I realized there was something, but I wasn't quite sure what it was, and I've been looking for it. So,
Mm.
speaking of childhood, so you mentioned that you had been brought up with a picture of a very wrathful God. So one that would punish you, send you to hell. What can you share about the spiritual foundation, if any, that was part of your upbringing?
So I was raised in a Christian house, you know, Christian by name, not so much by, you know, the way we treated each other. And it was very, very fundamentalist church that I was in. They took everything very, very literally in the Bible, which that's always a recipe for disaster, because I think a lot of what's in the Bible is very, very beautiful when you understand the allegory of it and you can read between the lines of what is being said. That's when it really comes alive. And I actually experienced that quite a lot when I got back. I would have these memories come up of things I was taught, the Bible verses that I can remember, and now I see it from a completely different angle. And I was like, oh wow, like this is different now. I actually like this stuff. So it's been very healing for me in that regards as well.
And so when something you wrote to me when we were corresponding, you said that you've always been tuned to another reality, another dimension. I wondered if this understanding or this kind of yearning was there when you were a little boy, and if it offered you
Yeah,
relief from the trauma that you were experiencing.
absolutely. Yeah. So that's why, you know, when I said like I used to, my outlet used to be through sports. Sports gave me a place to enter into the flow state. I couldn't reliably enter into the flow state all the time, but I remember, say, when I was playing basketball, like sometimes I could just enter into a state of mind that I couldn't miss no matter what you did to me. Like I'd literally have guys pushing me over and I would throw the ball in the air as I was falling to the ground and the ball would go in. These things were happening not because I was skilled, but every now and then I could just find this vibration and just tune my consciousness into it, and amazing things could happen. But then whenever I would have like a big game where it really mattered and I was in my ego and I was like, hey, like I need to win. I'm gonna dominate this game. I could never enter into that flow state anymore. It was always happening when I wasn't doing something important, when I was just playing with friends and stuff. And I was also on the side, like I was experiencing a lot of strange spiritual things, you know, ghosts, a lot of that weird stuff growing up, a lot. And so I always knew there is more to this reality than what's being told to me. But whenever I speak about these experiences, people think I'm either crazy or I'm hallucinating or I'm just being an imaginative little child. When you put the two of those things together, like I knew that there was a lot going on in this reality that was something that was worth investigating. And
Mm.
just like you said. And so when I say like I'm tuned into this other reality or that I was tuned into it, it wasn't something that I was doing with my ego. It wasn't like, oh, look at me, look how spiritual. No, it was like just things that were happening to me.
Tell us about
And
a
yeah,
moment where, I don't know if it's your first memory of experiencing something that made you know that there's something else to this reality, whether it was seeing a ghost, or tell us about a moment, a little story.
okay. I'll try not to get into the alien stuff. There's a few alien experiences
It sounds like
there.
we'll have to get you back on the show.
Yeah. Actually, like the first one, and this one is still bizarre to me. I can't explain this one still, but I remember when I was young, there was this. My sister had gotten this like a beanie and some gloves, and I remember this beanie. It was like red and white, and it had the little pom pom on top. I don't know what you call that thing on the top,
Yeah.
but it was cool because it reminded me of like you'd see this stuff in American cartoons and that, and now it was real. It was in front of me, and my sister and I were fighting over it. And I remember one time she left the gloves and the beanie somewhere, and I went and I took it, and I went to bed. And as I went to bed, I used that beanie and the gloves as my pillow because I was like, now she won't be able to take this back from me when I wake up. And so I remember waking up, and the first thing I thought when I wake up is the beanie and the gloves. And then I looked, and the beanie and the gloves were there as my pillow, and I went to grab it, and my hands went right through it, and I
Oh,
was like, what the heck? And then I was trying to grab it, and then it literally just disappeared in front of me. It faded, and I was like, I mean, I didn't know what to do. It was right. And then I went and I looked all over the house and I kept asking my sister and my mum, where's that beanie and where's the gloves? And they didn't even know what I was talking about. And they were like, I don't know what. And I was like, come on. And I was going mental. I was like, you guys had it. We are fighting over it and stuff. Like, and they acting like it never existed. And now, I don't know. That's the one that kept coming to mind. I didn't want to bring that one up because I can't put any spin on it.
it's almost like like a parallel dimension, a parallel life, and you sort of slipped between the two.
That's the only thing I can think of,
Yeah.
but I struggle to say it because I don't know anything about these things. But I know what I experience, and I haven't had like I'm not like going around like hallucinating all the time and having strange experiences. No, like that was like one thing that happened.
It's very
Um,
interesting, Jacob, that one. And the other thing that's interesting is you mentioned that as a child you had past life experiences of being an African American man. Tell us a bit more about that.
yeah, like I remembered the energy of being an African American, and my mom used to tell me, like she was like, man, every time we'd have the TV on, whenever there were African Americans on TV, you would run to the TV and like you were so excited to see them. You were so happy to see them all the time. And I remember I used to have this memory of my favorite leather jacket. It was a brown leather jacket, and I had a big afro, and I used to wear like the little flare jeans and that, and I used to wear these brown leather shoes and a black turtleneck underneath the brown leather jacket. And I remember that was my favorite outfit. And even now, when I remember it, I remember that feeling I had the way I used to walk, and it was like so cool, man. Like that was the '80s. So I'm born in '89. I remembered the '80s, and I remembered as well in this life, I was upset because I preferred the '70s. The '70s was cool. The '80s were not as cool. I remember feeling this. And the past life memory that used to always come up, there was this dream that I was having where I don't know how I ended up in this situation, but I remember fearing for my life and I was driving And as I'm driving, I'm feeling dizzy and I don't know what's happening, but I'm driving and I'm scared for my life. And as I'm driving, I get cornered. All these police cars stop me. And I get out of the car and I've got my hands up and I'm looking down at the ground and all these cops are yelling at me at the same time. And because they're all yelling at the same time, I don't understand what they're saying. And I just got my hands up and I'm like, please don't shoot me, please don't shoot me, please don't shoot me. And then bang, 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 and I'm dead. That's what I remember. And I always remember waking up from that dream and just feeling horrible, absolutely horrible. And yeah, I remember when I was growing up, I was always very, I'd get this chord was strung in me whenever I would see anything about racism, neo-Nazis, all that stuff, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, like that stuff. Like I never paid attention in school, but whenever they spoke about the civil rights movement in America, you could not distract me. I was undistractable. Something would happen and I didn't know about I didn't believe in reincarnation until I was in my mid to late 20s. But I remember experiencing these things, and yeah, and then there's other places that people have experienced where like you've gone somewhere maybe or you've met someone for the first time and you've met them. There's that deja vu. These are common experiences that everyone's had. So yeah.
And do you believe, given your perspective of seeing all the beautiful lights and knowing that each of those lights represented a soul and that ultimately we are all connected, do you believe that what we refer to as past life experiences might really just be an aspect of remembering that unity? You're picking up on an aspect of that unity?
It's possible. Like I can't say for sure one way or another, but it's interesting if that was the case. Like, why would I be having these specific memories?
Like why that resonance? Person? Yeah, exactly. Why the resonance?
Not only that, but I have looked into a little bit of the research on reincarnation, and the real fascinating stuff is when kids can remember a specific person and they can give the details, but not only that, they have birthmarks associated with the death of that person.
Yes, how strange, yeah.
So when it's coming down to birthmarks and that, I can't help but think that we are one soul, and we're experiencing different lives, but that one soul is just like one drop from the ocean. When the one drop merges with the ocean, it's still one drop, but it's kind of both. It's not one or the other.
It's kind of both, exactly. And so thank you. You've answered another one of my questions, which was going to be prior to your NDE, which is probably the pinnacle of your spiritual experiences. I was wondering whether you'd had others before. So you've answered that. Thank you, Jacob. And I wonder if, so thinking about the precursor to your NDE, what actually triggered it, I was thinking, was it the loss of hope that you so profoundly described? Or was it a physical overdose of a substance? Because I've interviewed people before who've had NDEs, and I've even interviewed a lady who got to the brink of the NDE just through sheer grief and despair. So it doesn't even seem to be a physical thing that can trigger it, but the loss of hope that you mentioned, I wonder if you can reflect on that, on what took you to the point of going to the other side.
Yeah, great question. I'm so glad you asked me that. Yeah, and you said it. It was the loss of hope. And the interesting thing is there is a very, very, I don't know how you say it, like the loss of hope and acceptance for what is was kind of the same thing. It was like for the first time in my life, I accepted myself as being a ruined human being. I was wrecked, I was ruined, and I was never going to get better. And I just accepted that this is now my reality. I'm not going to try to change it anymore. And it's the darkest point you can possibly get to as a human, right? At least in terms of healing and that, right? But the light always comes right after that. And accepting the reality of our situation without any pretense was something that I had experienced before in other ways. And it was always followed by an amazing experience that finally got me out of the hole I was in. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I do believe the NDE I don't want to say it had nothing to do with the substances I was taking, but that was all a part of it. I was taking those substances because I accepted that that would be the height of my experience as a human, was to take drugs to escape the pain temporarily. But I also accepted that I would always be in pain, and that's it. I am what I am. That's it.
Would you say that acceptance of what is, another way to describe that could be surrender?
Yes, 100%. And that's what I had to do throughout my NDE. I don't use that word that often because I've had a few people tell me they hate that word. So they don't like the concept of surrender. And I guess maybe that's just because they're in their ego still, and the ego does not want to surrender.
Yeah, it
The
doesn't
ego
want to.
always wants to change.
That's
Yeah.
right. Relinquish control. It will not.
But yeah, surrender is I had to surrender to what was happening. And because people don't want to surrender, it feels like surrender to them feels like if you're driving your car and you take your hands off the wheel, and you close your eyes. Like that's how people feel in it. And to some extent that is what it feels like. And I'm not really at a point yet where I can teach people how to go through that in a safe way, because I'm still very early in this. I don't want to. I'm not ready to really teach people these kind of things yet, but I that one day I can be. So I just start with where I'm at, and where I'm at is just discussing my experience, and people can take from that what they're ready to take from it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're at this point because it is a really powerful story, and I so believe in the power of sharing our stories to connect with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
just still on that subject of surrender, because again, in our correspondence, you mentioned that you're now very open to being a vessel to be used as needed. So it seems like this surrender process is ongoing for you, Jacob, would you say?
Of course, yeah. It's it's more important now than ever, because now, as I'm getting like a lot of requests for interviews and I'm telling my story, and it's a very tricky time for the ego, because the ego says, hey, look at that, oh, 100,000 views here, oh, look how many comments, oh, everyone's saying all this good stuff to me. And then the ego wants to be like, hey, look at that, look at me. Like, and then as soon as I get into that state, I feel awful. Like, and I say awful compared to what's within me. What's within me that is glued to the present moment and is just accepting everything as it comes. In there is peace. But when I'm in my head and I'm looking at all the views and that and the attention, it's getting like, there's kind of like this anxiety that comes up, this tension, this stress that comes along with it. Not only that, I can no longer be an open vessel. I go from, like, when I speak, I feel like a lot of the time the higher power, God, the universe, call it what you want, is speaking through me, but only when I'm open. But as soon as I'm in my ego, I'll say something really dumb. And yeah, so yeah.
And what about that beautiful kind of message that God gave you, or the answer, one of the answers to your questions? And God said, that's what you're here for, to share the love, to help the people in your life feel that love. I wonder if you can reflect on that and what part sharing your story plays in that.
Mm. It's not nearly as cosmic, magical experience when you're doing it here on Earth. It's pretty basic because we're used to being here on Earth. But it's very interesting how it happens. Like I'll give an example. Was one time I was at the gym and we have a steam room and a sauna in the gym. I don't like the sauna. I always go to the steam room. I just prefer it. And one day I'm going to the steam room and something just, that vibration within just says, nah, sauna, go to the sauna. And I'm like, all right, I'll go to the sauna this time. And then I jump in the sauna. There's only one guy there. And then me and this one guy end up talking for like an hour and a half. And, I told him about my NDE, and, he was a former Catholic, and, I'm sort of, long story short, like his life was changed a little bit from the conversation we had, and he saw things in a new way. And he had a bad car accident, and he had a little bit of brain damage and stuff. So, but I'm not judging him for that the way everybody else is. I'm feeling what he's feeling, and we're connecting on this vibrational level where we are the same person. And I can see how healing that is for him, that somebody is giving him respect and not judging him because he's got scars all over his face and he's struggling to speak coherently. And when I'm giving him that energy, I'm receiving that energy at the same time because it's flowing through me. As I love others and I heal others just through presence and awareness and giving them attention, as I heal them with that, I heal myself.
Mm.
I feel the same thing. And it's not anything that, you know, it's not the same thing as when you're on the other side. Like here on earth, it's just about being humble and bringing ourselves down to the level of those around us and meeting them where they are, and feeling where they are, and giving them that feeling, that energy that is running through me, giving him some of that or giving her some of that. It doesn't matter who it is. And when you're just in that flow state where you're just open, I find myself being put in places that I never would have gone myself had I chosen.
Mm.
And I always seem to be in the right place at the right time. I am not planning any of this or organizing any of this. I'm, it's all coming to me. Like all these interviews I've done, I haven't requested one interview. People have asked me to share it. And how amazing is that? Like, I didn't have to do any of it. It's just happening. Something's happening through me. So yes, telling my NDE is a part of it. But really, it's just about me being in the present moment and being wherever I'm needed and saying whatever needs to be said through me. If I tried to do it with my ego, it would be a mess. I'd go back to the way I was.
Tell us how life looks for you today, given what you've been through, your amazing experience, which I do realize is quite recent. How do you, when you think back to your relationships and reflect on the trauma you've gone through, how does your NDE help you look at that in a different way, perhaps?
Yeah, well, the NDE taught me about shedding the layers, but also at the same time, I realized that not everyone else is there. And so, like I've got my housemates that live with me, and my housemates, I've got 3 other housemates. They're all material atheists who don't believe in my experience, and they think I'm crazy. And it's cool. Like, all right, I accept you as you are. You are a material atheist who doesn't believe in any of this stuff. That's cool. God accepted me as I was. I accept you as you are. And learning to accept everyone as they are. Now, that doesn't mean that, I have to take abuse from other people. No, I've cut people out of my life for being very, very abusive towards me, but I accept that that's where they're at. And I accept that I'm not willing to take part of it. So I can still do that. I can still maintain my emotional integrity and my emotional health through being accepting of who I am and accepting of others and meeting them on their level. And, I'm also very aware of just being in the flow of life. Like, I am not the script writer of my own life to some extent. People can debate this, and I'm not saying this is 100% true, but just life as I'm experiencing it right now is happening through me. And when I allow it to happen through me, I can get through the hard stuff a lot easier because I accept it. I'm not applying resistance to it. And life is interesting. It's become like an interesting story since I started doing that. But before, when I was in my ego and resisting everything and hating everything, it was a nightmare, But in the past, I was never happy no matter what I got. I had some brief success here and there, and, I'd be temporarily happy for 5 minutes and then go back to being miserable. But, so I went from being unhappy and unsatisfied no matter what I got to now where I'm pretty satisfied no matter what I get, because my satisfaction is not dependent on anything external. It comes from within. And that place within me doesn't know how to be anything other than happy and satisfied and loving. That is its very nature. So I just tune into that and I'm all good.
It's kind of a paradox, isn't it? Because you mentioned that we've got to be captain of our ship in a way, but at the same time, what I'm taking from that is be captain of the ship to the extent that you must surrender to the higher power in order to live your truest life.
And all great truths are paradoxical.
Yes, yes.
And it depends on what lens you're looking at it through. So everything I say, you can see contradictions in it everywhere. And that's fine. It's when you can marry the contradictions and put them together, then that's when you find something. It's a lot like the yin-yang symbol. When I'm saying that you have to be the captain of your own ship, I'm saying that in regards to not not being the dog chasing its tail, which is what happens when you're a slave to your body. Okay, so when you're the captain of your own ship, okay, but who's the you that is the captain of your own ship? That's not
Yes.
the ego.
Yes, that's
It's
it.
the soul within. But then the soul within is directly connected to God. It's an aspect of God. That's the drop of water that's removed from the ocean. So it's not really you. And that part of you is not a control freak. So, it does get complicated, as you're saying.
No, but you do a beautiful job of clarifying it, Jacob. And I would love. I wonder if you've thought about writing a book about your experience.
I keep hearing that a lot lately. When I was growing up, I loved writing, and I always wanted to write a book, and I just never knew what I was going to write on. And I thought, when I get older, one day I'll have something to write about, and that time will come. I'm still very early on in this journey, so
Yeah.
eventually that time will definitely come, and hopefully that book can do some good for other people.
Indeed. And I don't want to let you go without asking you about intergenerational trauma. From your perspective as a near death experiencer, what are your thoughts on intergenerational trauma and how we can break the cycle?
Yeah, it's a hard one, because my parents both faced intergenerational trauma and they dished it out on me, and I don't understand why it happens intellectually. I don't understand, but all I know is that those who can take on that trauma and transform it are performing alchemy. They're turning lead into gold. So the people who, I don't know, like the greatest artists and the greatest athletes, and a lot of the people who are the greatest in their fields have a lot of trauma within them. And they've transformed that pain into something good, into something positive, and they've made something beautiful with it. Um, and I think it's something that we do sign up for, but I I mean, I can't understand why some people sign up for it only to dish it out to others. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't understand that.
Mm.
Why did my dad, he got traumatized by his dad. So my grandpa traumatized my dad. But why did my dad sign up for that? I don't understand that. And I can't understand it because I'm not my dad. I'm
Mm.
only me. And I think the fact that you are asking these questions, or if you're the audience and you're listening to these questions and listening to the answers, means that you are one of the people that is here to transform that trauma. It's pretty amazing when you do it. Like it's awesome because you're turning lead into gold, and the more trauma there is that you transform, the more gold you will have afterwards. And all my favorite people in the world, whether I know them personally or not, are people who have transformed their trauma into something beautiful.
What a wonderful answer. Thank you so much for that. I love that. And there's so much to ponder there. Now, what are your thoughts as we get ready to close on the phenomenon of the NDE itself? I mean, this is something that's been around since humanity dawned, but however, over the last few decades, there's been this flood of stories. Do you believe that there's something going on at the moment in terms of the NDE story playing a part in, you could call it an awakening of humanity? What do you think about that?
Definitely. And I think it's had to happen because we are in an age of globalization. And in this age of globalization, we're having a lot of friction with different parts of the world that do not get along. So the most obvious way I can show that is with religion, right? All humans can get along with just everything until it gets to something like religion. The gender war is another. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm a man, I hate women, or there's a lot of women who say, I'm a woman, I hate men. But then when you get to the NDEs, you're getting to a place that is beyond humanity. And the only way to unify humanity is with the wisdom and the truth that is beyond humanity. So, you get religious people who have died and seen things differently, and then they come back. Like, you're not really getting any NDE people saying, this religion is the right one. You have to join this religion. Like, you don't get that in NDEs, really. You're not getting any NDEs coming back and saying, women are better than men, or men are better than nah. Well, you're going to a place where you transcend gender, you transcend religion, you transcend your humanity. And when we can unify on that place of transcendence, and that can sort of infuse itself within the culture of the globe, and then this is going to help bring a lot of people together. And not only that, there's a lot of people with a lot of questions out there. What am I? What am I doing here? What is the purpose of this life? Is there a God? Is there an afterlife? What happened to my child who committed suicide or who was murdered? What happened to my dad or my mum who just died? There's all these questions, and I can understand why people don't want to just trust these answers to 2,000-year-old books and stuff. They want to hear from people who have experienced it today. So yeah, it is an awakening, and I think this is a part of the human evolution as a whole, that we are sharing these stories, and there are similarities within all of them. The NDEs, as different and as unique as each one is, they do not contradict each other. So that's pretty awesome.
That is awesome. And you're right, I can see the power of the NDE when you look at YouTube and see that hundreds of thousands of people are tuning in to these accounts, and there just seems to be no end to the desire to hear them, because it is like a reminder of home.
Mm. Yeah, it is. It definitely stirs something within the souls of people who are listening to them, and people are yearning for it. And I think the main difference that I have is that I want people to be able to experience the satisfaction that they're looking for. I want them to know that you don't have to have an NDE to tune into this love, to tune into this bliss, to tune into this cosmic vibration. It's within you. It's keeping you alive right now. And yeah, you can experience that vicariously through listening to these NDEs, but what about if that's already within you? You can go there. You can. It may not happen overnight, or it may, but who cares? You can get there. I think that's the thing that I want to get across the most to people, is that you don't have to experience this vicariously through others. You've got that within you. That love is within you right now. And I'd like to help people get there. So, yeah.
Well, on that note, how can people learn more about you and or get in touch with you?
I've got a YouTube channel that I've just started up. I've only got like 3 or 4 videos on there now. Um, and I've got so much I want to teach people and just guide people. And I've got a lot of stories to tell, and you can take them from them what you will. You can just do search for Jacob King, or if you go youtube.com/at Jacob King 369. So Jacob King 369 is the handle that you would type in on YouTube.
Perfect. I'll link to that in the show description as well, so it's easy for people. So, Jacob, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I am so thrilled to have caught you, I guess, at the beginning of this journey of yours. And I do hope we can stay in touch and continue our conversation, because, as you said, you've got lots of stories to tell.
Yeah, I do. Sometimes I look back and I go, and how have I experienced all of that? That's crazy. But yeah, I've got so much I'd love to speak about with anyone who wants to listen. So yeah, if you ever want to have me back on, like, it's been great chatting to you, Karina. So
lovely.
You're welcome to ask me on anytime.
Oh, well, that will be lovely. Any final message you'd like to leave the audience with today?
Yes, I'd like to remind everyone that God, the cosmic vibration, the love you're seeking is within you. Tune in. And if you struggle to tune in, that's all right. You're going to go on a hell of a journey finding out how to tune into it. Some people are already there. Good on you. Help out the other people too who are still looking for it. There's a key to the lock of everything you're searching for, and it is within. I hope you can get there. I know you can get there. And I wish you the very best of luck on your journey.
Thank you, Jacob. Likewise, wishing you all the very best. And I really can't wait to see what unfolds with you.
Thanks, Karina. Appreciate it. Speak to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to Spirit Sisters. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe so that you won't miss an episode. And don't forget to rate and review the show. Have an experience you'd like to share with me? Get in touch at my website, karinamachado.com, or find me on Facebook at Karina Machado Author. After all, there's nothing more powerful than a story.